women's club. So yeah, high school, I was involved in a number of things, including helping out at a local animal shelter, which I did a lot. But I also was involved in a lot of women's, and girls programs. In addition to the Girl Scouts, like when I was in college, for example, I served as a board member on our Womanist Society. And Womanism, if you're not familiar, it's a Black feminist sort of organization. So that's definitely close to my heart. I identify closely as a womanist now. And I actually just wrote a piece on Alice Walker for our page, which by our page, I mean, I work for the Freedom Center for Social Justice in Charlotte, North Carolina now. We're an organization that's been around for about 10 years. And I just joined on in the past couple months. And it's been a true blessing. I mean, it's basically my dream job. I get to make a difference every day. And to get it, so soon out of school is awesome. I'm really glad that, the things just went the way they did. So yeah, I am here because I'm curious to know what other organizations exist that focus on not just women's rights, but just spaces that I feel like a natural in women dominated. So I feel like this is something that could be a good fit for me. And I'm also very, very, very global and international based in my thinking and philosophies and readings and everything about me. Like my biggest passion in life is travel, mostly for the reason that I get to connect with people and do so on a really personal level, like the friends that you make, but really just also about just bridging cultural gaps and connections. So I like that this is an organization that puts a big emphasis on internationalism, from what I can tell. So I'm excited to see more about what you guys are about. And yeah, that's me. Any questions, just ask.
Well, thank you so much. What we're going to do now, Imani, we have a couple of other people who joined us, and we're kind of getting to the close of introductions. We kind of expanded it to 20 minutes, and we have about 3 minutes left. So we're going to ask Robin Lloyd to take a minute, and Toya Vick to take a minute, and then I'll take the last minute. So Robin, please introduce yourself, your branch, and a little something about yourself more than your branch.
Okay, yeah, my branch is in Burlington, Vermont. We have 1 foot of snow as of 10 minutes ago. And my interest in being on this group, this subcommittee, is that I attended the Durban Conference Against Racism and Discrimination back in 2001. And as you all know, that event ended, that was very moving global event in South Africa, ended right when the Twin Towers fell, just a few days later. In fact, I was coming back on a plane on that morning into Kennedy Airport. So I've just felt that because of what happened, there hasn't been sufficient commitment to the issues of reparations through the United Nations and so on. I think that's starting to rev up, and so I'm glad this group is moving forward, and I'm interested to know exactly sort of, well, what are we going to do? Okay, thank you.
Great, Robin, because that is on the agenda. So Toya, could you take a moment to introduce yourself? If you can come on camera, Toya, that would be great, since I don't think we've ever met. So unmute yourself. Where are you from, Toya?
Hi, greetings, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you today. My name is Toya Vick, and I am from Moreno Valley, California. I'm a participatory defense organizer, facilitator, criminal and housing justice advocate, and I'm just willing to support wherever I can support at. I will always be a voice for the voiceless, the arms and the legs for the seniors and the disabled, and the heart of the children. So I'm just here.
Well, Toya, are you in a Wolf branch?
A Wolf branch? I don't know.
The Women's International League for Peace and Freedom.
I don't know which branch. I know I signed up and everything like that, but that was it. I didn't no, I'm here in Riverside County if it's one this way.
What's the closest major city? Is it LA or where is it?
Oh, LA is 63 miles away from me. We got LA, we got Colton, Montclair, San Bernardino, Hemet, Paris. I'm like right smack in the middle of everybody.
Well, that's great to know. Well, my name is Teresa Elamine, and I first connected with Wolf in the 80s in Cleveland, Ohio, because two Black women were running the Cleveland branch. Ione Biggs and Kathleen Gathers. I thought Wolf was a Black organization until I arrived in the Triangle of North Carolina. And I learned that it's quite the opposite, but it is an international sisterhood. And so the dues are $35 a year, and you get to be a member on the international level, the national level in the US section. And if you have a branch, you're a member locally in a branch. And this is a very exciting time for Will, because we're getting ready for the International Congress. If it were not for COVID, we would be in Australia, but we'll be doing it via Zoom. So lots of us members will get to participate, which is kind of unusual and a great thing. But I first got involved with the reparations movement seriously after the Durban conference. I used to always say to my friends, oh, when you get that stuff together over there talking about reparations, you let me know. And after the Durban conference, there was a conference in New York in November, and there were people of African descent from around the world had come to talk about Durban and the conference and the call for reparations. And one person from the UK said, we're not just talking about a paycheck, we're talking about a transformation of society. And that's when I said, tell me more. So that's when they started talking about the injury areas. So how can we deal with repairing the damage that's been done from putting Black people into the criminal justice system by the millions? What can be done to provide healthcare that we have been denied? So he started naming all of the injury areas. And that's when I joined. And it was like month after month, there were conferences on reparations. So the Institute of the Black World held a conference in December of 2001. So we were on a roll because people said we're not going to let September 11th stop us from building the movement coming out of Durban. So this committee is a subcommittee of the Advancing Human Rights Issue Committee of Will. And this committee has a shelf life because the decade for people of African descent ends on December 31st, 2024. So over the next 3 years, we have to figure out what we're going to do because this committee goes out of business slightly after December 31st. Now the reparations movement will continue, but Imani and Toya, what you should know is that we have a Black Liberation Caucus inside of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. And one of our priorities to work on is reparations. We meet on the last Sunday of every month. So our next meeting is February 27th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be 1 p.m. Pacific Time. And of course, you're invited to that meeting. And it's a meeting for Wolf members only. And so By then, Imani, you'll be a member, we hope, and Toya will check your membership to see if you're an at-large member or if you're in a branch, but it is for WILF members. From time to time, we do invite guests in who are interested in seeing a little bit more about the organization, which is why we invited our sister Imani here tonight. Now, the next item on the agenda is to review what we did at our January meeting, and George Friday is going to help us with that. And so, George, can you give us a little sum up? We had a guest speaker in January, Akinyele Umoja, who's an expert on reparations. And so he gave us some history of the movement, and he's a professor, Dr. Akinyele Umoja at Georgia State University in the African American and Africana Studies Department at Georgia State University. So George, you did some research for us about reparations ordinances that have been passed. So we talked about that at the last meeting in January. So George, could you share the information about the Asheville ordinance for reparations?
Yes. I'm putting on my screen here the last page of the ordinance that was passed by Buncombe County. So the county commissioners voted for this for Asheville. There's a lot of legalese, all these pages before, 3 pages of whereases. But I hope that you can read this.
Well, George, since it's so short, George, could you just read the last page out loud for everyone?
Now, therefore, be it resolved by the County Commission of Buncombe County, the County Commission of Buncombe County apologizes to the Black community, including descendants of people who were enslaved in Buncombe County, and seeks to make amends for Buncombe County's participation in and sanctioning of the enslavement of Black people. 2, apologizes to the Black community and seeks to make amends for Buncombe County's enforcement of segregation and racist discriminatory policies and practices during that era. 3, apologizes to the Black community and seeks to make amends for Buncombe County's participation in urban renewal program that harmed multiple successful Black communities. 3, will anoint representatives, Buncombe County commissioners will anoint representatives to and fully participate in the new Community Reparations Commission that the city of Asheville is creating. 5, calls on other organizations and institutions in our community that have advanced and benefited from racial inequity to join in these steps. 6, calls on the U.S. Congress to pass H.R. 40, which would establish the Federal Commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans, which would examine the legacy of slavery and discrimination in the United States and make recommendations to Congress to address their lingering impacts. 7, calls on the state government of North Carolina to complete a parallel process. 6, directs county staff, including the newly formed Equity and Inclusion Work Group, to continue prioritizing racial equity in the implementation of the Buncombe County Strategic Plan, including, but not limited to, the following urgent priority areas for Black residents of Buncombe County: expanding access to quality early childhood education, and taking other steps to reduce the opportunity and achievement gap in the local public school systems. Increasing Black home ownership, business ownership, and other strategies to support upward mobility and build generational wealth within the Black community. Reducing health disparities, including infant mortality. Reducing racial disparities in the justice system. 9, directs county staff to update content on Buncombe County website about the history of Buncombe County to include references to enslaved people who lived in our community. And 10, directs county staff to provide, at minimum, biannual updates to the county commission on the impact of strategies being pursued through the strategic plan on reducing racial disparities in Buncombe County and on the progress of the County Community Reparations Commission, read, approved, and adopted this 4th day of August, 2020. I want to also share one more thing with y'all.
Okay.
This is from Evanston, Illinois. They also passed a reparations deal. They have a whole website. Part of their website, the city of Evanston, is devoted to this. And I'm scrolling here because they have reports on what they've done to date. So that they didn't just pass this, in 2018 or 2019, they've actually done something. Down here, one of the first things that they did after passing it, Resolution 58, commitment to end structural racism and achieve racial equity. So this is when they first started in Evanston and in Illinois. In June 2019, the city of Evanston government recognized that, like most, if not all communities in the United States, the community and the government allowed and perpetuated racial disparities through the use of many regulatory and policy-oriented tools. In November, they adopted a resolution that funded it, because people can pass something, but if they don't put money behind it, it's not going to happen. So they funded it by committing the first $10 million of the city's municipal cannabis retailers' occupation tax to fund local reparations for housing and economic development plans. And then they called for their local reps to endorse HR 40. That's it.
Well, that's excellent. So we have another member of the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. Thank you, Destiny Wallace, another 20-something. Destiny, unmute yourself and introduce yourself from the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. Thank you, Destiny.
Hi, my name is Destiny Wallace. I'm a part of the Fannie Lou Hamer branch in Columbus, Georgia.
Thank you. And Destiny is part of a project called Columbus Organizing Together. And a component of that project is strong parental involvement in community education, SPICE, where we're working on education equity with parents who have children in elementary school. And Destiny is a proud mother of a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and she's on the steering committee of the Fannie Lou Hamer branch here in Columbus, 28 years old. So we got the 20-somethings in the house tonight, Imani and Destiny. Isn't that great? And so thank you so much, George, for that research that you provided. Now we would like to kind of go around and have people say if they have heard of any activities in their communities associated with reparations or ordinances of this type. I know that Humboldt is a very progressive place. So if Sue have heard of anything, is there anyone here, San Francisco, Philip Cole, or Cape Cod, or maybe in Burlington, Vermont, where I know that it's the People's Republic of Burlington. I hear a lot of progressive things go on in Burlington. Is there anyone who has anything going on in their branch cities about reparations? Donna?
The only thing that I've heard in our area is the Unitarian Church of Brewster, First Parish Brewster, has a committee that's started up for this, because the meeting house, the church, it was a slave owner, was the meeting house for all the ship captains that lived in this area. So there used to be pictures of the ships in the front of the church. Now they're in the back because they're not so proud of the ship owners as people used to be with some enlightenment. So that's one thing that I'm needing more information about, but that's the only work that I know of here.
Well, it's very important to note that years ago, about 15 years ago, the Unitarian Church came out with a manual to help congregations adopt the movement for reparations. And I actually have that manual. So
Wow.
I will dig it up and we'll see if we can get it around. But it's a church-related effort because lots of churches have endorsed reparations. Imani, you were raising your hand.
Just to signify that I would love to have that packet. The Freedom Center for Social Justice, we are actually a very faith-based organization, and a lot of the work we do intersects directly with that. For example, there's going to be a white privilege conference coming up in Charlotte. It's the 23rd annual one held by the Privilege Institute, led by Dr. Eddie Moore. Who's an amazing leader in the racial justice rights movement. And it's going to be, we're doing the Freedom Center, I mean the Freedom Center for Social Justice by Work. We're hosting a day-long institute there that's about organizing faith leaders to act against the effects of white Christian nationalism. So it's just very relevant, and I would love to see like that package.
When is that event, Imani?
That conference is from March 9th to 12th.
That sounds good. I may come up for it. Anybody who has access to a computer, could you Google Unitarian Reparations Manual? Because it may be online. When I got it, it was a hard copy, but Google Unitarian Reparations Manual, because I have a hard copy. And it's been over 15 years. So my guess is that it's possibly online now. So if you could check that, that may give us all easy access to it. Well, we really want to have a deeper kind of strategy discussion that kind of builds on Robin's question. How do we do it? And what do we do next? Well, in Columbus, Georgia, every city has a strategic plan, in my experience. The Columbus, Georgia plan is called the 2025 plan, which says, where do we want to be on issues of poverty and quality of life for all citizens? And so by 2025, when I first saw the plan, it had a lot of economic development, but there was no plank, so to speak, on poverty. So I pushed the Chamber of Commerce and they added a poverty initiative. How do we want to reduce poverty? 30% of the children in Columbus, Georgia, Muskogee County, we're on the stolen land from the Muskogee Nation, by the way. And so here in Columbus, 30% of children live in poverty. They're overwhelmingly Black children. Columbus is about 50% Black. We think it's more than that, but this is a majority people of color county, but it's always been a majority white city council. It's always been very, very white on the leadership. And there's a strong history of enslavement because the city was founded in 1828 at the height of slavery. So there's lots of history about lynchings, etc. So when we put together our ordinance, we will recount the history from 1828 forward to say why we're justified in making the demand for reparation. So that's a process that's underway now with those of us who are meeting in the broader community. And I expect the Fannie Lou Hamer branch to be listed as part of the coalition for reparations, which we will be moving forward on the ordinance with the goal of having it passed during 2023. So George is giving us a time check. So at our next meeting, for sure, we'll go deeper on the question of what are we going to do about it. Pretty much every state has a history of slavery. When I lived in Rhode Island, I was surprised that there was slavery there as well, in the far north, in New England. They abolished it sooner than many communities. I know that there was slavery in Massachusetts. We heard that from Donna. So I'm not sure about the far west. We know that California was stolen from some other indigenous forces. But do the research in your community. We know for sure there was serious slavery in North Carolina and here in Georgia. So that's the research we want to get done. What is the history of discrimination and ill treatment of Black people in your communities, in Humboldt, in Burlington, and in the California area where you're from, Toya? So that's the research we want to do. So find out about how your city government works. We would have to pass it at our city council meeting. We have 10 city council positions. So it takes 6 votes to pass anything. So we'll be working to get those 6 votes. And right now the city council is a 6-4 white majority because the districts are racialized. Well, the map just went to the state and the state rejected the districts as they were gerrymandered. So now on February 8th, we start meeting again to do the new maps. And I've been moving to deracialize the districts because you got districts 1, 3, 4, and 7 are in the Black community. You got districts 2, 5, 6, and 8 in the white community. So white people are guaranteed those seats. Black people are guaranteed those other 4 seats. And then there are 2 at-large seats. And somehow they both are white seats. So that's how they get the 6. And it has in large part to do with Black people not turning out to vote. So I think things are about to change because the 2 at-large seats will become people of color seats, and that will flip the city council. So we'll have a 6-4 people of color majority. And that's how we'll get it passed. And the election is in May of this year, where we get to make a change in the way things are organized. So that's what's happening in Columbus with the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. And we would look for similar reports from all of you at the next meeting. Now, George, help me out. Other activities during the UN decade for people of African descent is the last item on the agenda. And we will probably have speakers on the movement to free all political prisoners and prisoners of war. There was an international tribunal held in New York in October, where the National Jericho movement talked about freeing Mumia, freeing Leonard Peltier, freeing all of the political prisoners that still are behind the walls. One political prisoner got let out recently. He was in his 80s after being there for well over 40 years, and he died within a month of being released. Sundiata Acoli, who is 84 years old, we're working to get him released. So that movement for freeing political prisoners is actually a part of the reparations movement and the UN decade. So we may have a speaker from the National Jericho movement who will tell us about the state of the movement to free all political prisoners. So that's one activity I know that's important. Now, we always pride ourselves on doing a 1 hour meeting. We're at 7:45. And so I want to open it up to hear from people. And I see Sue is writing something in the chat. But Sue, if you could say what you're writing so we can hear you. Unmute yourself, unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry, I was just, you know, we are pretty liberal here in Humboldt, as some of you know, but so far we've mostly worked on, we're on Wiyot territory, and there's been a bunch of stuff trying to, you know, like there's an honor tax. A lot of people pay tax to the Wiyot tribe, and the city actually gave some land to the tribe. But there's this whole other thing where the, you know, Chinese people were kicked out of Eureka and Arcata both in what, anyway, there was a whole Chinese exclusion thing. There was a Chinatown that got burned down and people got kicked out, and that was a big thing. And so there's been some talk about that, but we haven't talked much about the history of African Americans. We were, as I said in the note, Eureka was a sundown town where African Americans could not be in the town after dark. But we haven't, you know, we have an NAACP branch. We've got various organizations here, but we haven't really done much about our specific history with racism against African Americans. We're dealing with some other kinds of racism.
You're muted. Oh,
Yeah, I see. So it sounds like a good opportunity to explore that as part of the UN decade, because we have 3 years, less than 3 years to explore this, because the United Nations declared this decade. After the Durban conference, there was a 1 year for people of African descent. And the UN reviewed it and they said, we really need a whole decade. So the decade started January 1, 2015, and it's going until December 31st, 2024. And we have just 3 years left on the decade. And part of us who have been in the Black liberation movement for a long time have said that we didn't do anything the first 7 years. So what can we do now? And so to be able to have this subcommittee as a part of advancing human rights is just a real plus, because to have the weight of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom behind the struggle, I think it helps WILF in a lot of ways, but it also helps the movement to have reliable allies in a powerful organization that's over 100 years old. Robin.
Yeah, I could give a report, and out of it, I have a question. Burlington City Council voted unanimously to pass a historical reparations resolution to study reparations for Vermont's role in chattel slavery. That was on April 11th, 2020. Since then, we have created a position in the government that is titled, well, it's about racial equity and inclusion. And this woman, Taisha Green, African-American woman, is the first director. I've heard that she has 10 staff people, and her mission is to hold racial justice workshops, discussions, and so on with all 720 Burlington employees. And so that is happening. That's good. My question is that the new reparations resolution was informed by HR 40, a congressional bill to establish the commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans. Now, what has happened? I remember that John Conyers was pushing that for all of his life. And he is gone now, but has that gotten renewed?
Yes,
Support
yes,
recently? Yes, okay.
yes, Robin. Sheila Jackson Lee, the Congresswoman from Texas, has taken it up. So it's still called HR 40. So it's moving slowly. The problem has always been Nancy Pelosi. The Democrats are totally controlled by the power that she wills. And when John Conyers was head of judiciary, he really promised us that he would get it out of committee. And Nancy Pelosi said no. That was in 2014. And I reminded Eleanor Holmes Norton and all of the Black Congressional Caucus members what Nancy Pelosi did to us. And then she proceeded to move against John Conyers and get him kicked out of the Congress altogether. These are facts that we know inside of the Black Liberation Movement about what Nancy Pelosi has done to quiet the movement for reparations inside of the Congress. But there's a push on, and there's a big push on now because of the failure to pass the Voting Rights Act. And so people are starting to push even harder on HR 40. And if you notice that these city ordinances also speak to passing HR 40. So that's a key component of what we want to see in all the ordinances, that we know that I would guess that the Vermont congressional reps would support it. I know that my congressional rep, who's a member of the Black Congressional Caucus, Sanford Bishop in Columbus, Georgia, he supports it. There are 3 Black Congressional Caucus members in the Atlanta area, and they support it. But the rest of the Congress people in Georgia are of European descent, and they're Republicans. There are only 4 Democrats out of 14 districts in the state of Georgia, and all of them are Black. And so you have to examine your state and see where your congressperson stands on HR 40, because it would be great to get it passed out of the House before the tsunami hits in 2022, when the Democrats may lose power, and then we definitely will not get it passed. So that's where we are with that. And thanks so much for bringing that up, Robin. George has given me the 7-minute warning. So we have our work cut out for us, but please keep in mind that this is a 3-year committee. We go out of business on December 31st of 2024, when the UN decade ends. We'll probably have one sum-up meeting in January of 2025 to determine what we have accomplished as a subcommittee. And hopefully we'll say that we passed these ordinances. George, if you could just take a quick moment and put up the Black Liberation Caucus 3-year strategic plan, because the UN, the reparations ordinances are part of. So that's where we want to be by December 2024. George, could you read out the goal associated with the reparations ordinances?
Yes, by December 2024, there are reparation ordinances in 20 branch cities.
That is the goal, where we want to be at the end of 2024. Now, George, if you could scroll down to the short term goal. This is a work in progress that we're discussing in the Black Liberation Caucus. So now, could you read, is there anything in there about reparations? I think the Use Wealth International Congress, can you read
Yes.
that, George?
Yes. Use Wealth International Congress process to develop relationships with sections in Africa to advance work of the UN International Decade for People of African Descent, reparations.
Yes, and so thank you, George. This is a document that we've asked everyone to share with their branches. And so I believe that most of you, okay, you could take it down, George. Could I just ask, does everyone have a copy of that 3-page document?
I'm just seeing it now, but it looks fantastic. I'm very eager to read it carefully.
Well, I think, I know we have Robin's email, Donna's email. I know we have everybody's email. George, Sue, we may not have your email. Could you drop your email in the chat? Because George,
I have it because you had to register. I've got everybody's email that registered for tonight.
Good. Well, if you could make sure, George, to send out the 3-page draft document that's under discussion in the Black Liberation Caucus.
Sure thing.
We are ambitiously trying to get 300 members over the next 3 years. So in the short term, from January to June, we will sign up 50 new members by June of this year. And then we'll do the second 50 in the second half. But it's a 3-year strategy. And I love doing strategic plans. And so we're discussing it inside of the Black Liberation Caucus. But if you look at the short-term partners, every single branch is a partner. So George, before you send it out, if you could update it and add Humboldt to it, I think Ann Arbor is already on it, but we consider all branches as partners. And then we have some individual folks that we've learned to work with over time, like Robin Lloyd and Tina Shelton, that we've identified them as reliable allies in the struggle. And if Alan Haber's name is not on there, George, if you could please update the allies in the branches section of the short term to make sure that our partners and others are here.
Thank you. I'm a little late. I'm a little late getting on. We had a demonstration about no war in Crimea and the whole war system. And
well, that's great.
Freeze for Peace was the name of the demonstration. It's about 0 degrees here in Ann Arbor.
Wow. Oh, don't you just love Ann Arbor? The University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. So at any rate, we're 2 minutes from our hard stop. And George, we're recording that there are 11 participants in this meeting. The meeting has been recorded, and the last thing we need to do is to decide our next meeting. My proposal is that we meet on the first Friday of every month at this time at 7 p.m. And we will send out the registration link every month in time enough for everyone to register. But the next meeting is proposed for March 4th, which is the first Friday in March at 7 p.m. Are there any objections to meeting on Friday, March 4th at 7 p.m.? Please check your calendars and make sure that you can be available. We want to standardize the meetings so that everybody knows it's always the first Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. That will be 4 p.m. Pacific. And we meet for 1 hour. So if there are no objections, we will declare March 4th our next meeting. 7 p.m. And we do have a hard stop at 8. Are there any final words for the last minute? And I urge people to save the chat. I don't know that there's much in it, but I always save the chat. So does Alan, would you please introduce yourself to everyone? You're the only one who hasn't done that.
I'm a latecomer. I'm Alan Haber. I'm in Ann Arbor. I'm part of the Ann Arbor Ypsilanti Wilf with O'Deal. And I'm an activist for a long time. I know Robin. I'm glad to meet, and I've met George, and I'm glad to meet the other people here all in due time. And we'll be putting forward a reparations proposal into the Ann Arbor City Council. It will take them several years to be able to digest even that thought. Yeah.
Oh, come on, Alan, in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, come on now. Well, the other claim to fame of Alan Haber is that he is the founder of Students for a Democratic Society. And for those of us who are old enough to remember that important organization, that's who Alan Haber is. That's his claim to fame. So it's 8 o'clock, friends. So good night, and we'll see you in March, if not sooner. Thank you.
Good night. Glad to be with you.
Good night.